Hello and welcome to the Fill in the Blank Programmer. Now, if you watched the episode on my other channel, C++ Weekly, about the game that teaches C++, you may have noticed at the end there that I actually used a Raspberry Pi for doing some of the development on the game, just to make a point about the fact that it didn't take a very powerful computer to necessarily do C++ development today, but it was still kind of slow. So I just did a full clean build of this awesome game, and it took 8 minutes and 21 seconds. So I've decided that I'm going to go ahead and see if I can speed this up by booting from a SSD over a USB 3 controller instead of booting off of the SD card on the Raspberry Pi, which is known to be a very slow interface. So my Raspberry Pi has 4 gigs of RAM and it has a 1 gig swap space currently, just for context. So if I've read all of the instructions correctly, I just need to simply write the operating system to an SSD USB drive and it will work. Because I have a Raspberry Pi 4 and it wasn't one of the very first Raspberry Pi 4s produced, I don't think. So let's just go ahead and give this a try. Now, we were using Ubuntu before. It is not my favorite Linux OS. I prefer Manjaro, which is available here in the Raspberry Pi Imager. But let's go ahead and use this, which has already been cached to my computer. I am going to write it to this Samsung Evo 850 spare drive that I had laying around from quite some time ago. And I'm going to hit write, and I'm going to see what happens. Uh, all right, it seems to be loading. That was shockingly easy. I was really expecting something more difficult. I removed the SD card completely from it, so I know that for a fact it is trying to boot from the SSD drive, and it seems like it's going to succeed. I'm seeing read light access on the drive. All right, I don't know exactly what happened, but after it did the first boot up, it just had a black screen. I powered it off and powered it back on again. And here we go. It's definitely booting Ubuntu from my spare SSD drive. I'm going to go ahead and install all of the C++ tools that I recommend for development on Linux with my script, which works on Ubuntu for Raspberry Pi, just the same that it does for any other version of Ubuntu. All right, so it looks like I do have a minor problem with my script here that's going to need to be updated. I need to run an apt command to go ahead and get code configured. There we go. That should be easy enough to add to my setup script. Now I'll just go ahead and rerun the script so that it can finish doing the setups. This shouldn't take very long now because there shouldn't be anything else to install. Okay, so it's done building and it's, well, still 8 minutes and 5 seconds. We'll have to go back and look at the previous numbers from the previous install of Ubuntu on this. So I don't think that it actually sped things up a whole lot, maybe just a little bit. I will say, though, that the entire Raspberry Pi does feel more responsive. It seems that it's just a problem with compilation. It's mostly CPU bound. It's not disk or memory bound, at least for this project here. And 8 minutes feels kind of like a long time for a small project like this to build, but if it's a system that you have on hand, I will say it's a lot faster than waiting for a C compiler on the Commodore 64, and I'll try to link to an episode that I did about that on my other channel. But otherwise, I've kind of grown to like having this as a spare second computer as I've been playing with it over the last several hours today recording various things. I think I'm going to have to probably put Manjaro on it since that's my favorite version of Linux anyhow, and continue to play with it in the future. But thanks for watching this episode. Thought it was fun. Be sure to subscribe.